Welcome, chosen ones. Sit down for a second, even if you're driving, even if you're on a break at work, even if you're lying in bed scrolling at midnight because sleep won't come. Sit down, because what I'm about to say might change the way you look at your phone the next time a familiar name lights it up. There was a door. You remember it. Maybe it was slammed. Maybe it was closed so quietly you didn't even hear the latch click until months later, when you finally noticed nobody was calling anymore. Either way, you were the one standing on the outside of it, cold, confused, wondering what you did to deserve silence from people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. They thought that door would stay closed forever, and that you'd be the one standing there forever, waiting, begging, chasing. That's what they expected. That's the story they told themselves and everyone who would listen. They'll come around eventually. They need us more than they think. They'll learn. Except something happened they didn't plan for. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You built a life on the other side of that door, brick by brick, without their help, without their approval, without their permission. And now, chosen ones, here is the part that's going to sit differently with you than anything else I say today. The same door they closed on you is the one they're now knocking on. Quietly, carefully. Sometimes with an apology folded inside the knock. Sometimes with a request dressed up as concern. But make no mistake, they are on the outside now. And you are the one who decides what happens next. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the people who once acted like your absence meant nothing can't stop reaching for you now. Stay with me, because the real shift hasn't even started yet. For a long time, being pushed out of a family felt like a verdict, like a judgment on your worth, delivered by the people whose opinion mattered most, back when you still believed their opinion should matter most. Being excluded from gatherings, left out of conversations, talked about instead of talked to. It doesn't just hurt in the moment. It rewires something. It makes you question your own memory of events, your own read on what love is even supposed to feel like. But here's what nobody tells you in that season of hurt. Exclusion, as brutal as it feels, has a strange side effect. It clarifies. When you're no longer performing for people who were never going to see you clearly anyway, you get access to a version of yourself that only exists in private. Undistracted, unmanaged, unedited, for an audience that was never satisfied no matter what you gave them. That's the part they didn't calculate. They thought cutting you off would shrink you. Instead, it gave you room. Room to breathe without bracing for judgment. Room to build without someone standing behind you, arms crossed, waiting for you to fail, so they could say they told you so. And in that room, chosen ones, something in you started to change shape, quietly, without announcement. The way real transformation always happens, not on a stage, but in the empty hours when nobody's watching, and you keep going anyway. Now don't drift yet, because what you just heard was only the opening crack. The real shift, the part where the story flips entirely onto its head, is coming up right now. If you're feeling even a flicker of recognition in what I'm describing, if some part of this is landing in your chest, like it was written specifically for you, then prove it. Drop a 77 in the comments, so the universe knows you're not just watching this passively, you're stepping into it. Number 1. The silence after the door closed. Nobody prepares you for how loud silence can be. In the first weeks after a family cuts you loose, or after you finally step back from people who'd spent years making you feel like an afterthought, the quiet is almost unbearable. No group chat notifications, no holiday invitations, or invitations that feel more like obligations than welcomes. No check-ins. You sit with a phone that doesn't ring, and you start to wonder if you imagined the whole relationship, if maybe you were never really part of the picture to begin with. That silence isn't proof that you didn't matter. It's proof that the version of you they wanted, quiet, compliant, easy to overlook, finally stopped showing up. And they didn't know what to do with the version that replaced her. So they said nothing. And in that nothing, you finally heard yourself think for the first time in years. At first, the quiet feels like punishment. You replay conversations, searching for the exact moment things went wrong, as if there's a single sentence you could find and fix retroactively. But the longer the silence stretches, the more it starts to feel like something else entirely. Not punishment. Space. Space you didn't know you needed until you finally had it. The mind that used to spend its energy managing everyone else's reactions to you suddenly has nowhere to point that energy. So it turns inward instead and starts asking better questions. Not, how do I get them to approve of me again, but what do I actually want my life to look like? That question could never get asked in the noise. It only surfaced once the noise finally stopped. Number 2. What they thought would happen. They had a script in their heads, and you weren't supposed to deviate from it. In their version of the story, you'd spend a few weeks upset, maybe post something vague online, and then quietly slide back into place, grateful for whatever scraps of connection they offered you next. That's the pattern they were used to. That's the pattern that had worked for years, because you used to make yourself small enough to fit back into whatever shape they needed. But this time, the story didn't follow the script. You didn't come crawling back. You didn't send the apology text they were waiting for, the one where you take responsibility for a conflict that was never fully yours to carry. Instead, you just continued, living, working, healing, on your own timeline, in your own way. And that continuation, that refusal to perform the reconciliation they scripted, is exactly what cracked their certainty. Scripts only work when everyone plays their assigned role. For years, your role was predictable. The one who apologized first, the one who smoothed things over, the one who carried the discomfort so nobody else had to. When you stopped reading from that script, the whole scene lost its shape. There was no cue for what came next, because nobody had ever written a version of the story where you simply kept walking. That unpredictability, chosen ones, is not chaos. It's the first sign of a person who finally understands that they were never obligated to perform a role just because it made everyone else comfortable. Number 3. The house with the lights left on. Picture a house, warm inside, windows glowing gold against the dark, and you standing outside it in the cold, watching a life happen without you in it. That was the picture for a long time, wasn't it? Everyone else seemingly fine, seemingly whole, while you carried the ache of being the one left out in the weather. But pictures change. Somewhere along the way, without you fully noticing when it happened, you built your own house, your own light, your own warmth, that doesn't depend on being let back into someone else's. And now, chosen ones, the picture has flipped. It's their house that feels colder, their table that has an empty chair nobody talks about directly, their gatherings that carry an unspoken tension, a name that comes up and then gets quickly changed to another subject. You're not standing outside anymore. You built your own glow, and from where you stand now, you can see clearly that the house they thought was so secure without you has been missing something ever since you left. Building your own house wasn't glamorous. Nobody films the part where you're furnishing a life out of nothing, piece by piece, with shaking hands and no blueprint. Nobody sees the nights you sat in an empty room, wondering if you'd made a mistake, but you kept adding rooms anyway. Friendships that didn't require you to shrink. Routines that made you feel steady instead of anxious. A version of home that didn't depend on anyone else's permission to exist. That house is yours now, fully, in a way the old one never was, because you built it with your own hands, instead of inheriting it under someone else's conditions. Number 4. Why their name feels different now. There was a time when seeing their name pop up on your screen sent your whole body into a spiral. Dread, hope, anxiety, all tangled together in one notification. That reaction wasn't weakness. It was conditioning, built over years of hoping this time would be different. But notice something, chosen ones. Notice what's shifted. The name still appears sometimes, the message still comes through, but your body doesn't brace the same way anymore. There's a calm where the panic used to live. That calm isn't coldness, it isn't revenge, it's regulation. It's what happens when you're no longer waiting on someone else's mood to determine your worth. Their name used to hold power over your nervous system. Now it's just a name. And that shift, subtle as it feels, is one of the clearest signs that the ground beneath this whole dynamic has moved. That kind of calm doesn't arrive overnight, and it isn't a performance you put on for anyone watching. It's built slowly, through every moment you chose to sit with discomfort instead of reacting to it, through every boundary you held, even when your chest was tight with old fear. The nervous system learns safety the same way it learns danger, through repetition. Every time you responded from steadiness instead of panic, you were teaching your own body a new lesson. This name doesn't get to run the show anymore. That lesson, once learned, doesn't get unlearned easily. Number 5. The difference between forgiveness and reaccess. This is the one people confuse constantly, and it's worth saying clearly. Forgiveness is something you can offer for your own peace, regardless of what the other person does with it. It's an internal release, a way of setting down weight you were never meant to carry forever. Reaccess is a completely different thing. Reaccess is a door, and doors have locks for a reason. You can forgive someone fully, wish them well even, and still decide that they don't get automatic entry back into your life on the same terms as before. That's not bitterness. That's wisdom earned the hard way. The chosen ones who thrive after being cast out are the ones who learn to separate these two things, releasing the resentment internally while still protecting the boundary externally. You can let go of the anger and still keep the key in your own pocket. This distinction confuses people who are used to forgiveness meaning full restoration, no questions asked, no conditions attached. But real forgiveness was never supposed to erase your own judgment. It was supposed to free you from carrying someone else's actions as a weight in your own body. Deciding how much access someone gets going forward is a separate, practical question. One that depends on their behavior, their consistency, their willingness to actually change, rather than just apologize for the version of themselves that got caught. You can hold both truths without contradiction. Peace inside you, boundaries outside you. Number 6. The empty seat at their table. Every family gathering has its geography. Who sits where? Who's expected to show up? Who fills which role in the unspoken choreography of the room? For a long time, you had a seat there, even if it never quite felt like it fit. And then, one way or another, that seat became empty. What they didn't expect is how loud an empty seat can be. It doesn't disappear quietly. It sits there, visible, a gap in the pattern that everyone notices, but nobody names out loud. Conversations shift around it. Photos look different without you in them. And slowly, that empty seat starts asking questions nobody in that room wants to answer honestly. Why is it empty? Whose choice was that, really? And what does it say about the room? That the space where you used to sit has never quite felt filled by anyone else. An empty seat has a way of outlasting the explanations people give for it. The first gathering, maybe it's easy enough to wave off. Everyone's busy, everyone has their own life now. But the second one, and the third, the excuses start wearing thin, even to the people making them. Eventually, somebody has to sit with the plain fact of it. The chair stayed empty because of a choice, and that choice has a name attached to it that isn't yours. That's a heavier thing to carry across a dinner table than most people are prepared to admit out loud. Number 7. The return attempts. This is the part you already know is coming, because it's already started, hasn't it? The texts that feel a little too casual, like nothing happened. The mutual friend who mentions, almost too casually, that they've been asking about you. The invitation that shows up out of nowhere, dressed as generosity, but carrying the faint scent of an agenda underneath it. These are the return attempts, chosen ones, and they come in every flavor, sometimes soft and apologetic, sometimes indirect and testing the water, sometimes bold enough to act like the years of silence simply didn't happen. None of these approaches are inherently evil. People are complicated, and sometimes distance really does soften people and bring out something more honest in them. But you get to evaluate each attempt on its own merit. You get to ask, is this a genuine shift or just discomfort with how the story looks from the outside now? That discernment is yours to use, carefully, without assuming the worst of everyone who reaches out, but without abandoning your own hard-earned clarity either. Some return attempts will surprise you with how genuine they feel. Real accountability, real listening, a willingness to sit with your version of events instead of arguing against it. Those are worth taking seriously, slowly, at whatever pace feels safe to you. Others will feel familiar in a way that puts you on alert, the same old patterns wearing new language. You're allowed to notice that difference without guilt. Evaluating a return attempt honestly isn't cynicism. It's the same care you'd give any decision that affects your peace, weighed calmly instead of rushed by nostalgia or obligation. Number 8. The storm that learned to knock. There's an old image worth sitting with here, a storm that used to arrive uninvited, tearing through everything in its path without warning, without apology, without regard for what it destroyed on the way through. That was the chaos you used to absorb, over and over, because you didn't yet know you were allowed to close the windows. But storms change too sometimes, when they finally understand that the house they're approaching now has locks. This storm learned to knock. It learned that barging in isn't an option anymore. And whether that knock is genuine growth or just a new strategy to get back in the door, the truth is the same either way. You're the one who decides whether to open it, how wide, and for how long. The storm doesn't get to choose the terms of entry anymore. You do. It's worth noticing too that a storm learning to knock is itself information. It means somewhere along the way they came up against something that used to bend and doesn't bend the same way anymore. That's not nothing. People don't usually change their approach towards someone they still believe they can walk over freely. The knock, however imperfect, is a kind of confession, an acknowledgement, even if unspoken, that the old way of entering your life doesn't work anymore. What you do with that acknowledgement is entirely up to you. Number 9. You set the terms now. This is the quiet power nobody talks about enough. It's not about punishing anyone. It's not about keeping score or making people grovel for a place back in your life. It's about the simple, radical fact that you are now the one who decides the terms. How much access, how much information, how much vulnerability you're willing to offer, and to whom, and on what timeline. For years, the terms were set for you, what counted as too sensitive, what counted as overreacting, what counted as owed. Now the terms run through you first. That's not coldness. That's what it looks like when someone finally understands that healthy relationships require consent on both sides, not just compliance on one. Setting the terms doesn't mean shutting every door forever, and it doesn't mean treating every request for connection as a threat. It means checking in with yourself before checking in with anyone else. Does this feel safe? Does this feel mutual? Am I being asked to shrink again, or is there actual room here for the person I've become? Those questions used to feel selfish to even ask. Now they feel like basic self-respect. And that shift alone tells you how far you've come from the version of yourself who used to say yes automatically, out of fear rather than desire. Number 10. Why they can't stop reaching out. Here's the part that might feel almost unbelievable if you're still early in this process. The silence you kept, the distance you held, has done something they didn't anticipate. It's made you harder to explain away. As long as you were nearby, easy to blame, easy to point to as the difficult one, the story about you could stay simple in their minds. But distance doesn't let stories stay simple forever. Without you there to argue against, without the daily friction to point to as evidence, some people start to sit with harder questions. Was it really all you? What role did the rest of the picture play? And that discomfort, that unresolved question sitting in the back of someone's mind, is often exactly what pulls people back toward reaching out. Not because you did anything to force it, simply because the version of the story that let them feel comfortable is harder to hold on to in your absence. There's also something simpler happening underneath all of it. People notice absence in ways they never noticed presence. A missing name at the table gets discussed more than a name that was always expected to be there. Your steadiness from a distance, the fact that you seem to be doing fine without the connection they assumed you desperately need, becomes its own kind of quiet statement. You didn't have to send a single message to make that statement. Your life, simply continuing to go well, said everything that needed saying. Number 11. The version of you they never met. Somewhere in the space you built after the door closed, a version of you emerged that the old dynamic never had room for. Steadier, less reactive, able to sit with discomfort without collapsing into it. Less desperate for approval that was never going to arrive on reasonable terms anyway. This version of you wasn't created out of spite. It was built, slowly, out of necessity, because you had to become someone who could hold your own life together without waiting on permission from people who weren't holding up their end. And here's the strange part. The family that once complained you were too much, too sensitive, too difficult, is now encountering someone calmer and more grounded than they've ever seen from you. That contrast is uncomfortable for them because it raises a quiet, unspoken question. What if the difficulty was never really you? That version of you didn't arrive by accident, and it definitely didn't arrive painlessly. It came from every hard night you sat with your own feelings, instead of numbing them. Every time you chose honesty with yourself over the comfortable lie that everything was fine. When a family finally meets that version, steady, unshaken, no longer performing for their approval, it doesn't feel like reunion to them at first. It feels like meeting a stranger wearing a familiar face. That disorientation is theirs to sit with, not yours to fix. Number 12. What peace actually costs. Peace isn't free, chosen ones. Everyone loves the idea of it, but almost nobody wants to pay the actual price, which is usually disappointing someone. Peace cost you relationships that weren't ready to meet you honestly. It cost you the fantasy of the family you wished you had, in exchange for clarity about the family you actually have. It cost you some nights of loneliness that felt unbearable at the time, and some holidays that looked different than everyone else's picture-perfect version. But look at what it bought you in return. A nervous system that isn't constantly bracing, a sense of self that doesn't depend on someone else's approval to feel solid, the ability to walk into a room, any room, without shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. That's what the cost of peace buys, eventually, for the people willing to pay it. Most people never pay that price, and that's not a judgment on them. It's genuinely hard to trade the familiar discomfort of a broken dynamic for the unfamiliar discomfort of standing entirely on your own. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown peace, right up until you actually live inside the peace long enough to realize how much lighter it is. You already made that trade. You already know something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. That solid ground built by your own hands holds steadier than any ground someone else could hand you on conditions. Number 13. The key they no longer hold. There used to be a key that lived in someone else's pocket. The power to make you feel small with a single comment, to unravel your whole week with one dismissive tone, to decide, without ever saying it out loud, whether you were allowed to feel good about yourself that day. That key doesn't live there anymore, You took it back, slowly, through every boundary you held, even when it was hard, through every time you chose your own peace over their comfort. And now, when they try the old moves, the ones that used to work like magic, they find the lock has changed. The key doesn't fit the same way it used to. That's not because you became cruel, it's because you finally became the one holding your own access. Taking that key back wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was 100 small ones. A comment you didn't let land the way it used to. A guilt trip you recognized in real time instead of absorbing automatically. A silence you held instead of rushing to fill it with an apology that wasn't yours to give. Each of those small moments transferred a little more weight back into your own hands. By the time they noticed the key was gone, you'd already been holding it for a while. Number 14. This isn't revenge, it's alignment. Let's be honest about something, chosen ones, because this matters. None of this is about revenge. Revenge keeps you tethered to the people who hurt you, orbiting around their reactions, needing them to suffer in order for you to feel okay. That's not what this is. What you're building is alignment. A life that matches your actual values, your actual needs, your actual sense of what respect looks like. The fact that some of the people who once dismissed you are now watching that alignment with something like envy or regret isn't the point. It's a byproduct. The real prize was never their discomfort. It was your own steadiness. If they choose to grow, to show up honestly, to meet you where you actually are now, instead of where they left you, that door can open again on fair terms. If they don't, the door simply stays closed, and your life keeps expanding either way. This distinction matters because revenge has an expiration date built into it. It burns hot for a while, and then leaves you exactly where you started, still defined by the people who hurt you, just angrier about it. Alignment doesn't work that way. Alignment keeps paying off long after the people who doubted you have stopped being relevant to the story at all. That's the real difference between a life built to prove something to someone else and a life built simply because it's the one you actually want to live. Number 15. The door opens on your time. Here's where this all lands, chosen ones. The door that once closed on you was never really about your worth. It was about their limitations, their fears, their comfort, in ways that had almost nothing to do with who you actually were. And now that same door sits in your hands, not to slam shut out of spite, not to leave open carelessly out of old habit or guilt, but to open, when and if it makes sense, on terms that protect the peace you worked so hard to build. Some doors reopen into something genuinely repaired. Some stay closed, and that's all right too. Either way, the power was never in their hands to begin with. Not really. It was always yours. You just needed the silence to remember that. Whatever you decide to do with that door from here forward, do it from steadiness, not from fear of missing a chance, and not from guilt over a story that was never entirely yours to carry alone. You've already survived the hardest part, which was learning to stand without their support holding you up. Everything from here is simply a choice, made calmly, on your own terms, at your own pace, by someone who finally knows exactly what they're worth. So here's where we land. The family that once treated your absence like nothing has spent this whole time discovering exactly how much that absence actually weighed. You didn't have to force that realization. You didn't have to chase it, argue for it, or prove it. You simply kept living, kept building, kept becoming, and the truth caught up on its own timeline. That's the quiet power of walking away with dignity instead of desperation. It doesn't need an audience to be real. And if you take nothing else from today, take this. Your worth was never up for a vote in that room. It never depended on their willingness to see it, whether that door reopens into something real or stays closed while your life keeps expanding on its own. You are no longer the person standing outside in the cold, waiting for permission to feel whole. You built your own warmth. Nobody gets to switch that off again, not without your say. If any part of this reached something in you today, take a moment before you go. If you're navigating real distance in your own family relationships, remember that this kind of thing plays out differently for everyone. And it's all right to talk it through with someone you trust, a counselor or a therapist, if you need support making sense of it in your own life. You don't have to carry it alone, and reaching out for real support isn't the same as chasing people who hurt you. It's just taking care of yourself. Carry that with you longer than this video lasts. The door is yours now. The pace is yours now. The peace, however it was bought, is yours now too. And nothing that happens next changes what it already cost you to get here. If this message spoke to you, hit that like button, subscribe, drop the number 77 in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye.